Hello, writers. Have you ever bought a writing craft book someone says you just have to read?
Is it still sitting on your shelf? Have you even cracked the spine?
That's totally me.
Don't ask Renee how many craft books she owns.
Why do we keep buying these books we never read?
We all want to improve as writers, but that's hard to do alone.
That's why we started the Words to Write By podcast, to tackle these books together, chapter by chapter, and learn from their advice.
Or not. Sometimes they're wrong.
Hi, I'm Renee Nelson, former college writing instructor turned full-time writer and podcaster. After many years, I finally have a complete draft of my memoir.
And I'm Kim Smuga-Otto, author of the humorous fantasy series Boy Bands and Dragons. The first book, Our Comeback Tour Slaying Monsters, will be released this year by Riverfolk Publishing.
And now, on with the podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast.
Welcome.
Today, we are covering 2 stages of the hero's journey, writer with 1,000 faces, writer's journey, yada, 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 whatever we're calling this thing.
Right. If this is your first episode, it probably shouldn't be. You should go back. Go back to the beginning.
So we covered the ordinary world stage last full podcast, and today we're covering the call of adventure and refusal of the call. Refusal of the call.
Yep. Stage 2 and 3. So in the previous episode, we talked about the ordinary world, which is there to contrast the special world. But your hero starts in the ordinary world, and at some point, adventure comes to them.
One of the ideas of the ordinary world is while it is a static place, it's not a stable place. There is a reason why your hero leaves that world. There are things that are going on in the ordinary world, and I highly recommend that previous episode to get you started. But now we're leaving that place. We've got the call.
Yep, we got the call.
The call gets the story rolling. This book is by Christopher Vogler, by the way. He also says that the call is sometimes called the inciting incident, the catalyst, or the trigger. I personally like the inciting incident best. What do you think?
It's certainly like the term you're going to hear most often in like regular books, about writing.
Yeah, I like it because like a lot of the things that he gives as examples of the call really aren't calls. He's like really stretching the meaning here to claim this is the call and this is the adventure sort of thing. And inciting incident is just a regular, like it starts the story going.
Right. Something happens and then the hero has to react.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So he says it's some event that's necessary to get a story rolling once the work of introducing the main character is done. Bam, done, simple. There you go. And there are various ways for the call to happen to a character. And he goes over a few of those. One of them is a message or messenger, like an actual physical message. Well, in our day and age, it would be like a text message. And that's one way to do it. What's another way, Kim?
Well, I mean, a phone call, obviously, a letter in the mail, somebody basically telling someone else this is going to happen.
Yeah. He says there's other ways. So the unconscious, he always has to go to the woo-woo place. So there's some kind of like prophetic, he says, like a thing inside the person psychologically, inside the hero that, they need to go out and do this thing. It's this drive either for adventure or to seek something that pulls them out into adventure.
Right. Some mystical woo-woo thing that pushes your hero, which for certain stories makes perfect sense.
Can you think of a story like that?
I was trying to think of examples for this. Actually, so like I have this series I love called Finder, which is a comic book series. And it starts off with a dream that he has before everything starts. And the character actually is having adventures all over the time. But this is kind of the framing device that the author has to show something is coming and he's become part of it.
Right. So it's kind of like he's getting visions and then things in the real world start like mirroring those dreams or something.
No, it's more prophetic. Like, I think almost in this case, it's a way of framing the story. The author is saying, I need something to frame the story because other things have happened in the past. I'll use this vision, this dream, this moment to say, okay, this is when this thing starts.
And then I like this one. The hero may just get fed up with the way things are.
I think this is actually a very common in movies especially, you see the hero doing something over and over again. You see the shittiness of their life. You see what they're being put upon to do, and suddenly they just like crack and they do something else.
What? Can you have an example?
Well, I know Shirley Valentine kind of worked that way.
I don't know who that is.
Oh, it's a really fun story.
Oh, okay.
It's about a middle-aged woman having an adventure.
Oh, I like that. I'm a middle-aged woman. I like adventures. That could be good for me.
You should watch that one. I think a lot of modern books might feel a little bit that way.
Right. They're just fed up. They're like, damn it, something's got to change, and I'm the one to change it. Mm-hmm. All right.
So I was kind of organizing this as like forms that it might take. And then we have the next piece gets its own headline, but it's only one paragraph long. So it's called Synchronicity, which is a string of coincidences and accidents come together to push the hero into doing something.
Exactly.
So I kind of put that under as another type of call.
Like fate. Like, you put two people together as if by the hand of fate. They just so happen to be at the same place, the same time, and then, adventure ensues.
Or, you missed your train, you got on the next train, somebody dropped something, you picked it up, you returned it to them, you have an adventure.
Do you ever get that weird feeling when you're in the car and, something happens where you have to, oh, dang it, I forgot something. You have to pull right back into your parking spot, go back into the house, get the thing or whatever. And you think, I wonder if that just made me if that prevented me from getting into an accident.
Or you get into an accident and you look and say, if I only had done this one thing to slow me down earlier today, none of this would have happened.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I don't think of that. If I got into an accident, I wouldn't think of that. I'd be like, God damn it. I only think, oh, well, it slowed me down and that annoys me, but I guess it doesn't annoy me if I think about it in the way that maybe I prevented myself from getting into an accident.
Unless you get into an accident because you slowed down because you weren't there at a certain time.
That's true. I would think of that. Mm-hmm. I would think of that. And then we've got temptation.
With the 3 examples of women.
Of course. Why we're not surprised anymore.
Yes.
Oh boy. All right.
But this is actually a good example. The other situation that, the last straw, the hero just changes is more internal. This is, you see a poster that says adventure, go to Belize. And then suddenly just changes their mind and they go on an adventure.
Right. Kind of like, those World War II posters that, were like, let's kick the Nazis' ass, and there'd be like this, guy going to war and
going to Belize, going to war. Yep. Same thing.
Going to war. Yeah. Like that was, that's a temptation.
Temptation is a pretty base desire. And, it's a really great way to move the hero to do something.
Right.
It's amazing what we do for a pretty girl or a pretty guy.
Right. The example that Vogler uses is Percival. The innocent young hero is summoned to adventure by the sight of 5 magnificent knights in armor. To war!
To Belize!
To Belize!
Okay, and now I was going along in order, everything was fitting, and then we get Heralds of Change because, next random subheading, Heralds of Change, which is calling back to the archetype, the herald. So we get to do archetypes again. Or not.
Boo! No, it makes sense. It makes sense because the herald brings the message. Usually they're the messenger.
So
right?
We kind of covered it earlier, but yes, basically. Is there anything else in this section that you found?
I like that you can't always tell if the herald is an ally or an enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they change, right? Mm-hmm. They start out as an enemy, they become an ally, whatever. I thought that was kind of cool. Or they give the illusion that they're an enemy and they turn out to be just fine. I keep thinking of Jane Austen because the characters aren't always what they seem to be.
Yeah.
Like Mr. Darcy seemed like a total jerk face. But then later you find out he's just an awkward fool. So, yes, your herald, whoever your messenger of the call is, could, be promising something they can't deliver. They could be, seemingly suspect, but turn out to be, and then withholding information, but later you find out they have a good reason for doing so.
When we were doing Howl's Moving Castle, we decided that Calcifer could be the herald because he gives her the reason to stay in the house. And it's very nebulous if he's doing it for his own reasons or there might be some other elements because he won't tell her all the details.
Yes, because you're not sure if he's being bad or not. Like if
completely on the up and up with her or not.
Right. And what kind of character he truly is. In the film, so I thought I had seen Howl's Moving Castle, but apparently not. Because I read the book and then I thought, this seems so familiar, but no, I guess I must have seen previews. And I went to see the movie and I'm like, none of this is familiar. Oh my God, I actually had not even seen this movie. I thought it was a different Miyazaki film. So I'm watching it and I really liked how they turned the Witch of the Waste into someone who's like a shapeshifter. Like she's kind of evil and bad, but then she turns into someone who's not so bad. Yeah. And then she's still kind of iffy, but they keep forgiving her because she's kind of pathetic.
Because she's old.
She's old and pathetic, yes. So anyway, she's kind of like that.
I love stories that aren't straightforward, and therefore I want a call that's not straightforward. And I want it to come from somebody that I'm not sure if it's the right decision for the hero to do or not to do. And so I love that kind of nebulous thing. And one thing I will give Christopher Vogler is that he isn't saying you're just going to write a story where you've got a heroic hero that that gets the right call and does the right thing. He's saying, you can do a lot with this structure that can give added depth and twists. Mm-hmm. So the personality of the hero is one way you can play around with these ideas to make them not so obvious.
Yeah.
Then we come to a word called reconnaissance, or we come to a subtitle called reconnaissance. And I don't think this has anything to do with the concept of the call. It's almost something that's like extra to a plot.
Yeah. It's almost like they're trying to set the mood and give like an ominous mood to the story. Like things are happening behind the hero's back and a little more than they do now. For example, I immediately had an image of, I hate using Harry Potter as an example. I'm going to do it. In the film, McGonagall, was that her name?
Professor McGonagall?
Yeah.
Shows up as a cat?
Yeah, and she's like in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And
watching.
It's at night, and she's watching. And then there's a conversation between her and either Dumbledore or Hagrid. I don't remember. I haven't seen it in so long. That is kind of like this, where I thought, oh yeah, they're there before even Harry knows anything.
Mm-hmm.
They're talking about it. So we as the audience are privy to things going on outside of the hero's control.
See, I would have put this in the ordinary world section because I think it does take place in the ordinary world. This is more of a framing device or, like you said, a heads up to the audience that something else is coming. That something else is important to happen. And often it's initiated by someone that's evil to give it just that much more of a edge to it all.
Right. I wrote preview of shenanigans. Mm-hmm. Pretty much what it is. Reconnaissance is the preview of shenanigans.
And it's also a really good thing to use if you take a while in your story to get up to speed. It's something you can throw in to tell your audience, no, something is going to happen.
Right. You plant a question in their head and then they're just kind of like reading, trying to find that answer. It keeps them entertained while you're trying to get the other stuff going. Mm-hmm. All right. Disorientation and discomfort. I wrote, what the F?
Oh, really? I saved that for another section. This is a chance to go into a long paragraph and a half on film techniques to set a scene. And he made Hitchcock sound boring and obvious, which I don't think is a trademark of Hitchcock.
This is interesting. He does a close analysis. And it's so, like, not matching anything he's done before. Like, it makes me feel like his editor told him, no, you should do some close analysis. And he tried it once and was like, nah, I'm totally not doing this, but I'm not going to waste it.
I wrote my words for the day they're going in.
Yes, that's what it felt like. Oh my God. He goes, the call to adventure can often be unsettling and disorienting to the hero. Heralds sometimes sneak up on heroes appearing in one guise to gain a hero's confidence and then shifting shape to deliver the call. And then he starts talking about the movie Notorious by Alfred Hitchcock. And the rest of it is just this close analysis of Notorious. It's weird.
Which makes me not want to watch the film either. That's the worst. When you actually have an analysis that makes you not interested in watching the film.
Right. So here's some of the language he uses. In the symbolic language of film, the shot expresses his change of position from playboy to herald and its disorienting effect on the hero. Grant gives the call, a patriotic invitation to infiltrate a Nazi spy ring. As it is delivered, Grant is seen right side up and in full light for the first time. Like, okay.
Or maybe he was watching the film and he should have been writing the book, so he decided to
I mean, at this point, we're not really sure what's going on, and we're just kind of being mean.
You're right, we are. So obviously, when you give the hero the call, things change. You can throw a whole bunch of stuff in there at that point. Good for you.
Right. And we did already talk about how the hero could be an ally or a friend, so I'm not sure we're talking about it again. But let's just move on.
To lack or need. Now, at this point, I thought we were going back to the forms that the call could take, because there could be something bad that happens, and the call is the hero needs to make it right.
Right. He says, a call to adventure may come in the form of a loss or subtraction from... subtraction. I can't read today. The form of a loss or subtraction from the hero's life in the ordinary world. Mm-hmm. One example is the kidnapping of a loved one. Mm-hmm. The loss of anything precious, such as health, security, or love. Can we think of an example?
See, my problem is he's got me to the point where I'm only thinking in movies. I'm having a hard time coming up with books because movies make these things so immediate. Like, they grab you. And I know the books do these things, but not necessarily. I think Pippi Longstockings, doesn't her dad disappear?
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. You know, that's the thing. I hadn't thought about that, but that's a really good point. Like, this book only really talks about movies. Mm-hmm. And it makes you only think in movies. And there's a lot more nuance in a novel. This is why I don't like using Harry Potter, even though they were books. And I don't like using, what's that other one?
Lord of the Rings?
No, I like that one.
Game of Thrones?
No, I like that one. The other, it's young adult books. They're always using these young adult books. What's the one with Katniss?
Hunger Games.
Hunger Games, right. The Hunger Games series. You go online, you will find those examples over and over and over again. And it makes me think, wait, are we writing novels here? Or do you just want to write a blockbuster movie?
Often when people write about these things, they love to have a movie tie-in because A, everyone's seen the movie, even if they're talking about the book, and B, they have lots of pretty images to go along with their writing their blog post on this.
That's true. That's true. But that's not helpful for people who want to learn how to write. But then again, we've also talked about how this book doesn't teach you to write. It just teaches you to write a plot or to design plot.
Which, I mean, I'm glad there are books out there that teach people how to plot, because if you can't plot, this could be a lifesaver. But it could also be a lot shorter.
Yeah. This book is really long. We're not even halfway through this book, dear listener.
I think we're going to go faster in certain sections.
Yeah, we are.
So then we get the no more options. Actually, this is a great call. It's like everything else has gone wrong. You got to go on the quest.
Yeah, I like that. Their hero runs out of options and they have no choice but to go on that. It's like, it's almost like you're rooting for the things to run out. You're like, you're not getting out of this one, buddy.
Nope, you got to do it.
The next one is warnings for tragic heroes.
Not all calls to adventure are positive summons to high adventure.
They are dire warnings of doom. We'll just move on. More than one call waiting.
Okay, so here's my issue with this one. Like, he talks about how, you could have your call to the physical adventure, but then you call to the adventure of the heart or something more. And my take on this is we're kind of getting to the point where we're doing character development. Often people start a quest and then they develop as a person. They have reasons to do it more than just the adventure because they care about the people, right? By this definition, all stories have multiple calls because you want the character to change over time and to care for more things and become more involved differently. I wouldn't call them all calls.
He does have a couple of examples. One of them is The Romancing the Stone. I've seen it. I actually really liked it. It was a long time ago. These examples are so outdated. So I think one thing that might be different from what you were describing is that in the movie that he's discussing, she actually has two calls, like right at the same time in the beginning of the story. She gets a map of adventure, right? Like, oh, there's this, what do you call it? Treasure. She's like, why am I getting this? And then she finds out that her sister has been kidnapped or murdered or something.
But it's not between going for the treasure or going for the sister because they're both linked together.
They're both linked together. So it's like the writer was like, okay, well, she's not going to go. She's kind of a mousy woman and she doesn't really want adventure. She wants it, but she just likes the fantasy of it. And yes, there's treasure. It's almost like a call for the viewer than it is for her. I don't think she's that interested in the treasure. She's interested in her sister. But the movie is promising the viewer that there will be a treasure hunt. Treasure is afoot. I guess he's just saying that, there could be multiple calls and have multiple motivations. Multiple stakes can be afoot in the beginning of a story to get the hero to go on that.
He chooses to use The Wizard of Oz as examples, and I found that they have gone so off the rails from what I can remember of the movie and so mythological in their interpretations. I'm going to vote we just skip them.
So he does do a close analysis of the Wizard of Oz throughout each stage. In the previous one, there's the ordinary world, and he has in italics this short paragraph talking about the Wizard of Oz and Dorothy on her adventure in the ordinary world. And then, every step I looked ahead has a little italicized paragraph of him discussing the Wizard of Oz as his example. Kind of like I did with The Hobbit about the hero's journey on our website.
My issue is that these get really psychological, Freudian and Jung. Like in this one, it's talking about the Wizard of Oz. He writes, she feels painted into a corner by a lack of sympathy from Aunt Em, her surrogate mother who has scolded her. She sets out to respond to the call under a sky churning down with clouds of change.
I'm surprised you read that sentence because I was going to read, a conflict is set up between two sides struggling for control of Dorothy's soul. A repressive shadow energy is trying to bottle up the good nature intuitive side.
I was a huge fan of The Wizard of Oz as a kid. I got all the books. I read them multiple times. I loved them. This wasn't my Wizard of Oz at all.
The surrogate mother. So weird. Just, she's the aunt. She's the aunt, okay? Yes, we get she's acting as the mother because she doesn't have a mom, but
I love The Wizard of Oz, but it is not deep on this level. It's a nice adventure story. And
they're kids' stories.
Yes, we're going to skip The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
We are going to go to a much better,
more fun book
to do analysis and to identify the call of adventure. If you've been listening to the past podcast, you know that we've been bringing in books because he only uses movies. The book we're using right now is John Scalzi's Kaiju Preservation Society. Before we get into it, I wanted to comment on something that I noticed and then one of Renee's friends pointed out, which is this is a first-person book. The protagonist's name is Jamie, and at least for a good 3/4 of the book, Scalzi avoids actually giving Jamie a gender.
Yeah, there's no he or she pronouns, or they.
Yeah, just he writes in such a way that you don't quite notice it until someone points it out or until you get a certain ways into the story and realize that you haven't actually had someone identify.
It didn't even occur to me that there were missing pronouns, and I immediately went straight to male from the very beginning. Isn't that weird?
Well, the author is a man, so that's kind of one that does condition us to see the book
right
as written. It starts off with Jamie proposing something to
the CEO.
The CEO.
So it's a tech person. Immediately I think of a guy.
And also just like at the beginning, they use the word, I'm going to crush it. And like it feels more masculine to my mind, especially since I could see the boss is male. If Jamie was female, Jamie was a woman, I would think the interaction might have gone a little bit differently. Actually, it's pretty cool because other than just that kind of like some stuff that kind of gets in, but again, it's filtering through what we expect.
Yeah, we're not complaining, dear listener. We're actually, I thought it was really cool.
I think it's pretty awesome.
And I'm really glad that my friend pointed it out. That I'm like, okay, cool. I can read this and like pick whatever gender I want, I suppose.
You can enjoy that. Sometimes when I was reading Murderbot, I'd do the same thing.
My husband, Max, like burned through those books. He could not stop reading it. We were trapped in Ohio and I had COVID and he was in their in his dad's kitchen. I think he read like 5 of them in 2 days. I mean, he loved them. And he kept talking about like, oh, I keep thinking Murderbot is a guy. And then the author reminds us, like they know that we're going to keep thinking that. And then the Murderbot talks about how not sexual they are and not having
do not
bits.
have sexual organs.
Right. They're not that kind of robot, or not android or whatever. And they have no bits, like they have no gender bits. But I love that the author kept reminding Max, because Max kept mentioning, going, damn it, I keep doing that. It's so funny.
Anyway, another fantastic book. But Kaiju Preservation Society is fantastic that it breaks down the stages in chapters, so we don't have to go over or under. Like chapter 1 was the ordinary world. Chapter 2, I think, is clearly the call.
Yeah, totally.
So what's happened is Jamie has lost, we'll just use their, I think, because we're going to have to...
They and them?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
Has lost their job, and they have become a food mood deliverator, delivering food. And so One of the places they deliver food to is this rich guy in an apartment, and what follows is a series of wonderful conversations between the two of them.
Well, it's his friend. It's Jamie's old friend from high school, I think.
No, it was the specific line was he pulls his mask off. It's Tom Stevens. And then my brain races around the primordial LinkedIn of my memory. And he comes up with Tom Stevens, who dated Iris Banks, who was the best friends with my roommate Diego when I lived in an apartment on South Kim Park, just above 53rd Street, and used to come to our parties sometimes. So, not a friend.
No.
But they strike on these conversations. This is during COVID, and I love how he never says this is the end of the conversation. He just starts the next one with the next delivery of delicious food, like deep dish pizza or shawarma, or it sounds like Tom is eating really well during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. The conversation doesn't stop. It's pretty much this entire chapter is a conversation between him and this guy. Mm-hmm. It's so cute and fun. I loved that so much.
Also, Scalzi uses a good way to pass time as Jamie has this new job and explaining what's happening in the food mood company without actually putting it into drama itself. So we don't see Jamie realize they don't have enough stars to make the next promotion. None of that stuff. It's all kind of background. Anyway, all this conversation leads up to Jamie saying that they're going to lose their job because Food Mood has been sold to Uber Eats, and Uber won't hire all the Food Mood employees that haven't got more than a 4-star rating, and Jamie's got a 3.975. This is the reason why you should always give 4-star ratings to any contracting person that you work with unless they're really horrible. But at that point, Tom offers him a job. So that's a pretty direct call.
Right. He says, I'm the only one of my roommates who had anything approaching close to steady work, so I was paying the rent and the utilities and most of the food. We're in the middle of a plague, so no one's hiring for anything. I have no savings and nowhere else to go. So yeah, no idea long term.
And Tom says, hold on.
Right. He actually says that. Go ahead and read that, Jeff.
He sets down a shawarma and disappears in the recesses of his very nice condo. A minute later, he came back and thrust his hand out to me. Take this. I stared at his hand. It was a business card on it. My face did a thing. Tom noticed, even though through the mask. What is it? Honestly? Yeah. I thought you were going to give me a cash tip.
He goes, this is better.
This is a job.
This is a job. So that's the call to adventure, is this card.
Yep. And the job offer.
Mm-hmm. And he takes away some barriers, like, oh, maybe I could think about it. But then he says, no, I'll let Gracia know you're coming, Tom said, and looked at his watch. It's 1 p.m. now. You could see her today, probably, or earlier tomorrow. But that's pushing it in terms of timing. And then Jamie says, you need an answer that quickly? And he says, yeah. That's kind of the catch, actually. So he doesn't even give the hero time to debate this.
Nope.
Think about it, research it, wonder. It's like, dude, you got to go today. You want this job? You want it? You got to get it now.
Yep. I think that's a great call. I also noticed they put a few extra bits there to explain why Jamie absolutely needs to take this job.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the whole focus of the chapter. All these great conversations, all this background, all this getting to know each other again. And it's like, here's a job.
Yep. Here's a job. All right. So that is the call to adventure. It was in a chapter perfectly executed by John Scalzi.
What I do like about the writer's journey, the hero's journey, is that it identifies critical elements that a plot needs to have to make it feel like a plot. And the call or the inciting incident is fundamental to telling a story. You have to have a reason why the story begins here.
Right.
A lot of people come up with stories, they have an inciting incident already. Like, that's kind of where the story comes from. And then they figure out the stuff on the other side, the ordinary world stuff and the later stuff based on that. But I suppose if you just had a story, you weren't sure, or you already started the story in the action, you need to figure out how to get them there. Thinking about an inciting incident would be useful.
Yeah. All right. So now we're back to Christopher Vogler.
Mm-hmm.
And we're on the refusal of the call, stage 3.
Very early on, he says what the dramatic function of the refusal of the call is, which is serves an important dramatic function of signaling to the audience that the adventure is risky. So at this part, it's framed as the hero refusing the call, but it has a very important element to the audience to let them know that this is a serious undertaking, or that there are risks, or that this is important.
Right. He calls it a pause. Like, after they kind of accept the call, they have to think about it for a little bit.
That's the most obvious one, or the most one is like they get the call and they say, no, I'm not going to do it, and then they do it anyway.
Right. But during this refusal, that's their pause. And they have to weigh all these options. And they have to say no, or they don't have to. But if they say no, that just kind of supports this idea that this is a very risky thing. Because why would they say no?
One thing I noticed in some writers is that they like to write very fast and like to move stuff through, and they move things through at such a rate that they, as the writer, because it takes time to put words on page, so you don't feel like you're going too fast, but then you hand it to a reader, and they're like, I didn't even realize this thing here was important, because you wrote it so fast and so quick to the next stage that we never sat and contemplated it. The refusal call is the pause. It's a slowdown. It's a moment to really make sure your audience knows that the call is important and the adventure coming is important or serious.
Right. So once you make your call important, then the hero has to avoid it. Or, sorry, not avoid it. The first one is avoidance. So there's various different ways they can refuse the call.
Right. And not all of them are straight refusals.
No, some aren't just like, no, I'm not doing this, and they walk away. Like, that's it. It doesn't always come out that way. In fact, that's probably like the least entertaining way you could do it. The first one is avoidance. So your hero might get a call to adventure and then just avoid it. You know, they're just like, nah, I don't want to do this. I'll just find a way around it. I'll say I'm too busy. His example comes from, well, he says, Rambo, Rocky, and John Wayne characters turn away from offered adventures at first because once bitten, twice shy. So they used to be heroes at one time, and they're kind of aging, you know, and they're old, and they're like, nah, dude, I've done this before. I'm not dumb. So they're avoiding it, you know, for age reasons. Logan, the movie Logan with Wolverine. He's like, nah, dude, I'm old.
Yeah. Or the other one is like, I'm not a hero. This is way above me. You don't want me. I'm not. This wouldn't make any sense for me to do it. That's the kind of the Hobbit version.
Yeah.
Why would you want a Hobbit?
Well, yeah. Why would you want a Hobbit? Right? He does say this that I thought was cool. He says, there is a charm in seeing a hero's reluctance overcome, and the stiffer the refusal, the more audience enjoys seeing it worn down. And I'm like, oh, yes, I am a sucker for that.
And that's the pause. This is serious. The fact that the hero had to think about it or had to overcome something to do it. And like you said, you enjoy it much more because of the reluctance.
Right. Well, depending on the story, you kind of want to laugh at him like, haha, you couldn't get out of this.
You're not getting out of this, bud.
Yeah, yeah.
That also goes to excuses. I think avoidance and excuses are kind of the same thing. Avoidance, you just don't say it out loud. Excuses, you actually come up with something.
Or the avoidance has like plot behind it, like some backstory, whereas excuses is just, no.
I'm busy.
Yeah.
I got to wash my hair.
I got stuff to do. Persistent refusal leads to tragedy.
I saw Hamlet a couple weeks ago.
Oh, there you go.
It's totally Hamlet.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why people like Hamlet, because you watch it and say, if you only killed the guy when you had the chance, everybody else would still be alive.
Yeah.
But you couldn't do it then, and you kept pulling back. My thought on the persistence, or the persistent refusal leads tragedy, is that this needs to be integrated to the plot. This needs to be a reason why you're watching the hero refuse, because nobody actually likes a whiny, unwilling main character.
Right.
I mean, that's like, I couldn't get this book because the character's always whining about not wanting to do the thing.
Right. Well, okay, yeah, Hamlet is the best example. So just in case our listeners haven't watched it in a while or read it, the key is that Hamlet is visited by the ghost of his dead father, which could also be a devil or a demon and not the ghost, but that's a different story. So ghost of his dead father, and says, your uncle murdered me and married your mom, and he's a total piece of shit. You got to murder him for revenge. And Hamlet goes, sure, okay, let's do this. So,
and then he says, I'm not sure, maybe not.
There's a lot of that. Is this a devil? Is this a ghost? Should I do this? Should I not? Am I a murderer? Am I a revenger? Blah, 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 blah. Goes on back and forth. That's why we love Hamlet. Anyway, there's this one part in the beginning where he has a chance to kill his uncle. His uncle is praying and kind of confessing in a way, because very religious. Hamlet goes, if I kill him right now,
he gets to go to heaven.
He gets to go to heaven. And that's not a good revenge. Right? So I'm not going to kill him now. If he had just killed him then, his mother would be alive. His mother gets poisoned, right?
Yep.
He dies. Everybody dies.
Ophelia.
Oh, poor Ophelia.
Ophelia's dad.
Oh, yeah, he gets stabbed behind a curtain. Jeebus.
What's the name again?
I don't remember his name. Okay, so that's the persistent refusal leads to tragedy, but not in an annoying way.
And then we also get conflicting calls and positive refusals.
Right. He says like it's like a macho hero.
The 2 calls at once are 2 different adventures. You got the positive refusal when the hero doesn't do the call and it's a good thing, referencing the 3 little pigs.
Yeah, thanks, Vogler. 3 little pigs. That's really helpful.
Very dramatic story.
Right. Well, the houses did get burned down or blown down.
This can work if it's part of your plot and it's very integrated. But again, part of what we like about the call is it's a clear call. It's a clear thing the hero needs to do, and it's obvious, and you start muddling it by having the hero refuse it, but being the right time to refuse it, and then accepting it later, or having conflict, and you're not sure which call they're going to take. You're introducing a level of complexity that might not be appreciated by somebody that wants an adventure book, or a quest book, or a genre book, like a lot of these fall to.
Yeah.
Then came the worst section that I had read yet, artist as hero.
Oh my God.
Like, this is just him waxing poetic about how great artists are because they take an artistic call instead of a financial call, and aren't they just the best thing ever? We artists.
Yes, us artists are great. You know, we have to live in the ordinary world to get experience, but then we have to be alone. Mm-hmm. Be alone and write about it.
Our art.
Yeah.
Next section is called Willing Heroes, which is actually really useful for our later conversation, which a willing hero is somebody who accepts the call.
Yeah, they're just like, let's do this. I actually did like the example. I haven't seen this movie in a while, so I should. Called Dances with Wolves. It's got Kevin Costner in it. He is a willing hero because he's suicidal. Mm-hmm. He's like, just give me whatever crappy thing you're going to give me. I'm ready to die.
When you have a willing hero, you do need to definitely show why what they're doing is a bad idea, or why it could be a bad idea. And since the hero is just going to go for it, you have to come up with some other way to demonstrate that this could be dangerous. In this example, he runs into somebody who basically did what he did and has ended up in a really bad spot. So a contrast right there.
I had another example. There's this movie, it came and went, and I think it was a remake. It was called The Green Knight. Mm-hmm. And I really liked it because I really like standalone films sometimes, like where it's like, that's the movie. It doesn't try to be anything else other than what it is. And it was really good. And it's about the next generation of the Round Table. Mm-hmm. He's like the son or the cousin of one of the Knights of the Round Table, and he's ready for adventure. And he does something really foolish because he's too eager to go on the adventure. And that's the call to adventure, is he makes a big mistake.
Does he go on the wrong adventure?
So a trickster thing, some trickster demon or whatever comes to the Round Table and says, you know, I offer you some kind of quest. Whatever damage you do to me will be done to you in a year or whatever. And the Green Knight chops his head off. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're way too eager, bro. And then at that point, he goes, oh. Shit, what did I do? So, yeah, that's kind of it, where he was too eager, and that was actually his downfall. But they can't be so eager that there's no tension there. There's no issue. There's, you know? They can't just be willing on the surface. They have to, like, there's be some deeper issues going on.
Again, if your hero is too willing, you miss the whole enjoyment of them taking the call and committing to this. And you're jumping over a really good section of the book to give you empathy for the character, to get you involved in the story. All this investment your audience puts in during the call and the refusal of the call is lost, and you're suddenly having to get it in other ways. I think when you're writing a story, the earlier you can get the audience invested in your main character, the longer they'll stick with you for the rest of the book before they put it down.
Right. And Vogler didn't mention this, but because my brain is thinking of the film Harry Potter, I'm sure it was in the book too, but I don't remember. So Harry is willing. He wants to leave.
Oh, does he ever?
But note, although he's willing, they had that preview of danger. Mm-hmm. We know something that Harry doesn't. So actually, that's something Vogler should mention, which is, yes, your hero could be willing and eager, but to sweeten the pot for the audience, make sure that there are dangers they're not aware of, but you are, so that you know they're going into danger. Mm-hmm. So I guess the dangers don't always have to be clear to the hero, as long as they're clear to the audience.
And then we get Threshold Guardians. I don't think Threshold Guardians belong in this section. I think Threshold Guardians belong in the Crossing the Threshold stage.
Weren't they a archetype?
They are an archetype, yeah.
Yeah. Well, but they end up here, don't they?
No, they really belong later on. Although, as it's been pointed out, one of the things about the stages of the hero's journey is that you can have them overlap, you can invert them, you can have one thing come before the other. This isn't required that you have these signposts, and you can only go from ordinary world to call. You could go from ordinary world to the mentor. You could do a lot of other stuff, meeting the mentor. You can do stuff there. So by that definition, you could have your threshold guardian, the person that's preventing them from answering the call right there, and that could be the refusal of the call.
Right. It seems as if the threshold guardian is after the hero is like, fine, I'll do this. Other things come around saying, wait, no, you don't want to do this.
We did the archetype of the threshold guardian. We said this is the point where the hero commits to the quest in a way that the call doesn't make them commit. Even if they answer the call and then refuse and then accept the call, that's still not the same level as the threshold.
He does another character analysis of Joan from Romancing the Stone. Do you remember that movie?
I never saw it.
It's really cute. It's actually really cool. It's about a romance novelist.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she loves to live in the fantasy of these adventures with these men and all this other stuff. But she's very mousy and she's very kind of like scared of her own shadow.
Mm-hmm.
She's only comfortable in that world. But then a real adventure.
And a real handsome guy shows up.
A real handsome guy shows up, yes. It's actually really good. I actually kind of want to rewatch it. Actually, it's been mentioned so many times. Actually, I keep saying actually. Blah, blah, blah. Threshold Guardians. It's not unusual for a mentor to change masks and perform the function of a Threshold Guardian, which makes them a shapeshifter. So I am so confused now. Moving on. Unless you have anything else you'd like to say about the Threshold Guardian.
No. He's got the secret door, which is about curiosity and how women always open the wrong door and get in trouble.
Yes. I wrote Bluebeard.
Oh, yeah, definitely Bluebeard.
Heroes inevitably violate limits set by mentors or Threshold Guardians due to what we might call the law of the secret door, which if there is a secret door, your hero will be so tempted that they will actually open it, like Bluebeard. So in case you're not familiar with the fairy tale, this guy named Bluebeard, a bunch of his wives have gone missing, so he's available. And he marries this one woman, and he says, you can go anywhere you want in this huge estate castle. Just don't go into this one room. And of course, she goes into that one room, and there are his wives decapitated and murdered in gruesome ways, blood all over the walls. And of course, there he is. Ha ha ha! Well, he's about to come back, and her brothers have to save her.
He would have killed her anyway if she hadn't opened that door.
Eventually, yes. Yeah. I mean, he's enjoying playing with his murderous food. I thought it was kind of like a Chekhov's gun.
I thought so too, although a Chekhov's gun is a bit more subtle. It's like you see it, and you know it's going to be used somehow. I mean, the secret door is, well, they're going to open the door and something horrible is going to happen.
It's too obvious, you think?
It's pretty straightforward. Although, you know what? In many cases, it works. I'm not sure how it fits in Refusal of the Call, but let's just go with that.
Yeah, that is where it doesn't, it's like a plot device. It's not so much a refusal of the call.
Mm-hmm.
How are they refusing the call? So this is the problem with podcasts. It's like the medium is just audio. But Kim just gave me the best look of disdain. Tired disdain, I think is how I would describe it.
In his defense, it's only one paragraph, so it doesn't hurt that it's there.
That's true.
Let's skip the Wizard of Oz and go straight to Kaiju.
Yes, please.
Okay, so Kaiju chapter 3 is the refusal of the call.
Dun, dun.
Jamie is very much a willing hero. Jamie's got a job. It's going to save everything. Jamie's going to take the job. Jamie's not going to refuse the job. So in order to make it significant, Scalzi basically does a pause and he devotes an entire chapter to people basically laying out exactly how serious and different and weird this job he's going to take is.
Right. They're here.
Or this job that they're going to take is. Just so you know, although they said yes right away, it's not just like, you know, a gig that they're going to go off and work for.
Yes. Essentially, he just creates these really funny discussions and scenarios for Jamie that explain to them exactly why they should not take this job.
Or why this isn't just a job. So Jamie is told that this company or this group is an NGO, a non-governmental organization that is dedicated to preserving large animals.
Right.
And he's going to have to go somewhere because they're going for this field operation. So Jamie doesn't know anything else about this. He meets with two people, Garcia Avella, who is basically the coordinator, and she's reading him through various things he has to consent to before they thoroughly sign the contract. And then a Dr. Lee to get his shots.
In the very first one, the first thing that makes Jamie kind of pause is this discussion with Garcia. And, he says, you're going to be in the field. And he says, can I ask for a bit of clarification here? And she goes, of course. And he says, when we say in the field, how in the field is that? I asked, is it we are far away from the rest of the world, but we still have walls in the field? Or is it we live in a small tent and poop in holes we dig ourselves in the field? And then she says, do you have
a problem with pooping in a hole that you've dug for yourself?
And he says, I've never done it, but I'm willing to learn.
Jamie is not going to say no to this opportunity. This is going to happen, even though we get various things about, how they can't guarantee their life when they're on the field, and they can't communicate with anyone. And if they tell anyone about what has happened, that the organization will go after them and sue them big time.
Right. And then in the very end, they're like, okay, you got any allergies? Not really. Is you handling heat? And then they go, well, there's this part about science fiction you need to know about, but I've read your thesis and you wrote about science fiction. She'll be just fine. And you're like, what? Oh, and then any dietary restrictions. And then they have a little joke about vegan cheese.
Yes. And then final question. Do you mind needles? I'm not a huge fan, but I don't have any phobias. I said, why? Because you're about to meet a lot of them.
And next we have a threshold guardian. I thought this was like a threshold guardian from the one he was talking about, where it's like, you've agreed to the quest, but you don't know what you really agreed to.
I could see that. I see Dr. Lee as a threshold guardian. I mean, I suppose at that point Jamie could walk out, but it's never really given the idea that Jamie is going to walk out. So I kind of put this more as the refusal. I mean, we're basically laying out the stakes. We've already talked about like losing your life and being isolated and all that stuff. But now we're talking about the stakes of getting like 30 shots.
Yeah.
Dr. Lee just keeps pulling out more trays with syringes that she's going to shoot him up with. And if that wasn't enough, there are side effects.
Yes. There's the big old table full of vaccines he has to take. And then he goes, well, you got to, be aware that there are some side effects. And a couple of these are going to make you feel ravenously hungry. Go ahead and eat all you want, but avoid excessively fatty foods, since one of these is going to tell your body to purge fats in a way that absolutely challenges normal sphincter control. And Jamie's like, that's not great.
Then it's also the yeah, that's not great. It's a mess. Seriously, don't even think about trying to fart for the next 18 hours. It's not a fart. You will regret it.
Jamie goes, I don't like you. I actually wrote LOL here.
And then I get that a lot. One of the great things about this book is that there are conflicts, but everybody is really nice about them.
Right.
Like, Scalzi could have written this doctor as absolutely a horrible person. But in a way, like, they're tough as nails and they're going to get Jamie through this, and Jamie doesn't like it. But you know what? Nobody's mean to anybody.
Right. So you think, okay, yes, he's going to have involuntary sphincter control, like not being able to control his sphincter. But that's not, it's like, okay, I guess Jamie can totally handle that, right? Like, whatever, okay, as long as I'm near the toilet. But then Dr. Lee pushes the boundary again. Like, you thought you were okay with these vaccines, but wait, there's more.
About 1 in 250 injections, the recipient feels the urge for, let's just say, intense and homicidal violence, like murder everyone in the building and build a pyre with their skulls level of violence.
Yeah. And Jamie says, I can understand that. But then the doctor says,
fortunately, there's a direct and accompanying side effect of extreme lassitude, which keeps most people from acting on the urge.
And Jamie's like, I want to kill you, but that would mean leaving the couch. Exactly. We call it murder stoner syndrome. John Scalzi, we love you. It's just fucking.
So Jamie gets the shots. And as a reward for going all through this, then the next conversation they have before they leave is about all the great money they're going to get from this job.
Right. Like, okay, we've created a couple obstacles to scare you, but really, really, you have to go on this quest because money, money, money.
Yes. I'm sure a line that Scalzi just wanted to work into because it's so great is...
he says, "This is great," I exclaimed. "It was stupidly perfect how all of my problems were suddenly solved with the strategic application of money."
Pretty much.
The story of my freaking life. Story of my... I'm not even joking. Yeah, this guy knows.
Anyway, so that's the refusal call. So Scalzi made this an entire chapter of people talking about risks and showing what Jamie's going to have to do to get all like it's all laid out there because the next step is him traveling. Because we've said it, there's only 2 days. He's got to be on the train by that point. So the chapter 3 is the pause that makes us appreciate everything that goes on afterwards. And if he didn't have it, if we just had Tom at the beginning saying, so you sign this just so you know these are the conditions and you have to get a bunch of shots, and we jump to, after having a bunch of shots, 2 days later I'm getting on the train.
I mean, it's fine, but it's not as fun as the way you did it.
You don't appreciate the significance of what Jamie's done otherwise, of answering the call.
Right. But also, I think part of the reason he has the pause is because we know something Jamie doesn't. We know...
They're kaijus.
Yeah, we know what KPS stands for because the title.
Right.
And so Jamie's going into something we already know.
Although, unless someone tells you the actual deal, you don't know exactly how they're going to save kaiju.
Right.
You don't know quite so much exactly how much of an adventure this is going to be.
Yeah. But now with all these vaccines and the humor, like he's laying through this pause, he's really laying the humor down and the fun and the disturbing all at once. Like,
the humor has been in this book from the very beginning. This, at every stage, he's saying, this is a fun book. We're not going to go Jurassic Park on you. Anything scary is going to be buffered by fun.
Right.
Bad things aren't going to happen to Jamie. Or rather, seriously bad things aren't going to happen to Jamie.
Okay. Well, I have not read the book, so no spoilers.
Okay.
She keeps wanting to. I can see in her head, like, can I say this? Can I say that? No. No.
No.
My friends did the same thing. So something about this book, people just want to tell you all about it. Don't let them, dear listener.
Read the book first, because otherwise we're going to tell you all about it next episode.
How many chapters they got to read the next time?
I don't know. I haven't looked that far.
Maybe a couple more chapters?
Probably a couple more. I don't even know what the next stage is.
I mean, if he keeps up with each chapter being a different stage, that just works out beautifully. Be like, thank you, John Scalzi. You are amazing.
Served it on the platter for us. Okay. So I think that's about it. We actually had one announcement regarding our process groups. Previously, we've been doing an alternation between a process group and a writing session, and we've decided that we'd rather just do weekly process groups.
Yeah, it's more fun that way.
Mm-hmm. And that way, also, you don't have to go to all the process groups. That way, it's a better chance if you've got a Wednesday that's free that you want to do it, you can join us. It's at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time over Zoom. There is a link on our website, and you can come in and talk about issues that you have as a writer that all your friends and family are tired of hearing you say.
Yeah, we're here to hear all of you, to hear what you have to complain about.
Or to celebrate stuff that's going well, or for all that sort of thing. It's nice to hang out with other writers for an hour and just talk about stuff.
Yeah, fun. What else do we got? You can totally tip us.
Yes, we have a tip jar on our site.
We do have a tip jar. So when you press play, we don't have that little screen that flips to you and says 20%. And you're like, $7? Is that really 20% of blah, blah, blah? You don't have to do 20%. I don't know what 20% would be. But, you could buy me a coffee or wine or a cocktail. Kim, what do you normally get at the cafe?
A cappuccino.
A cappuccino. So you could buy Kim a cappuccino and you could buy me a flavored coffee, depending on what time you tip me, because it might also be.
Anyway, that's on our site. So
hook us up, yo.
Thank you guys all for listening. And next week we're going to do a workshop, and then we'll be going on to the 4th stage, which is the mentor, I think. Meeting the mentor.
Meeting the mentor. All right. Well, that was a fun episode.
Yeah.
We're moving right along.
All right. You guys take care, and see you later.
Bye.
Words to Write By is produced by Renee Nelson and Kim Smiga-Otto. Our theme music is Roll Back the Carpet by Cool Cat Music. Have a great day.
The things I say. Why? They just come out. I'm my own worst enemy. Let's just say that.